Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Simulation Talk 363. Here we go. We are starting. Thank you so much, Guru, for announcing for everybody. And we can now add our stage on Discord. Appreciate you, Guru. Thank you so much. Oh man, codeofreality.com, and it's doing the weird thing again. What a strange thing that it only does it once in a while. What a weird glitch. Okay, let's start our stage on Discord. It is now officially open to the public. Here we are. How are everybody doing tonight? Good Friday. Antiquate bag. Well, you're home free, literally. Good to see you, Guru. While slowly everybody are joining from all the platforms. Let's also find out what we had. Flying high, appeared and disappeared. Huh? Sometimes. How do I remove these? Welcome, everybody. Simulation Talk 363. Wow, 2 days from full year's worth of lives. It's incredible how far we've come. Magic Sun is joining. Well, while everybody is slowly joining, I will let you know that it will be publishing the new community very soon, and it will be in, I guess, a semi-beta for 1 month. So anybody who wants to join it will be grandfathered in for lifetime for the same price. So as gratitude for the fact that you guys are going to be helping me shaping it. It has things in it, obviously, but then we'll kind of like agree together what should be in there. And I'll be announcing this probably on Monday. What up, Mariana? Katie? Good to see everybody. The website is going to be on MemberUp. I'm going to put the link and everything on Monday, so when it's ready. And yeah, what the benefit of it would be basically access to experts in their own respective fields. I'll be bringing only the best of the best, and they will be available for anybody who's paying the monthly fee. And you know, we have access to a lot of experts, and then I think that would actually be very beneficial for people. Okay. Ace, Katie, Metro Racing. Welcome, everybody. Slowly it's filling in. If you guys want to follow on Twitch, it's LaserX83 on Twitch. What up, Flying High? Good to see you. Feel free, if you want to come and chat, you can always raise your hand and I'll bring you up. Good to see you. Part RSD. Okay, and just reminding everybody, what up, Flying High? If you guys want to ask a question, make sure you frame it in terms of yourself, who you are, why you care. So let's talk about it from the perspective of the human experience. So what is it like to be you asking that question and why? That's the more interesting part. Preparing to officially launch the new teaser for the film. And Aaron is working, Aaron and Chris, director, they're working tirelessly on this thing. Very excited to share their incredible work. I am in awe every time I see what they're creating. It really is just mesmerizing. Okay. Couple more minutes for a few more people to show up. In the meanwhile, if you guys have any particular questions, what up, Sams? Please, reminding you to frame them in terms of yourself. And we can just flow. We can basically ask questions more about, the general human condition, what it's like to be us. Why do we care? What is it like to be you? Is it good? Is it bad? Why is it so? How can we make it better? How do you relate to world events, other people, things like this? That's the thing that I want to be talking about more than anything else. Part RSD is asking something. Let's see if we have a few topics that were lingering. Huh. That is, it is doing that, huh? It makes general chat disappear the second that I start a stage. What a strange thing, huh? Every time. That is a very strange thing that it does that. Huh. Bizarre. There you go. I have a thought that I'd like to place in your hands to play with. It relates to panpsychism. I emailed you from Plotterbase. To which email? To Laser Simulation X? What up, Flying High?
Hey, Danny.
How are you?
I am good.
Well, I'm glad to hear.
I have so many questions. I am an astral traveler. I'm from Germany. And I just recently, in my free time, I binge watched a few of your interviews, and I'm so intrigued by this. And I have a few questions to you.
Sure.
Okay. First of all, has anyone that you know, I think you mentioned that you yourself have not done OBEs without DMT.
Yeah, I know. I never managed to do it. I don't know how to do these things. I wish I could. I know people that claim to be able to do it, and I've never managed to do it.
Okay, then my first question would be if anyone has tried that, maybe to look out of body while you project the laser, or maybe they have the laser themselves. If you have any experience with that, if not, I would like to try it.
Let's do it. Absolutely.
I have another question for you. A second question was about when you were giving the overview of how reality works, where you say with the caveat, it might be not that it is like that way, but as I understood you, it felt very coherent. And I'm coming from a place of when I'm out of body, the way I experience is stuff, especially when it comes to how dualities work or how the universe works or something, or multiverse works. There is a sense of, I know that stuff. It's like remembering. It's not like that somebody tells me and says, oh, it's like that and that. Or if somebody tells me that, it's like, oh yeah, how could I forget, And there's a kind of, because you're in a different state of consciousness, you have access to more of knowledge and you remember stuff. it's kind of difficult to explain the same way you said, if you have never done DMT, I've never done DMT. It's difficult to explain until you experience it yourself. And it's the same way with OBE. It's a little bit different difficult to explain, but it's kind of in an elevated state of consciousness, and therefore you know more and you understand more. But the thing is, it's so natural to you that you don't even, sometimes you don't even take your day-to-day questions that you might have in waking life, you don't even take them with you, because when you're out of body, they don't even arise as a question anymore. It's just a given, right? This is how integrated that kind of new kind of sense of how everything works sometimes feels. And my question to you now would be, when you are on DMT and or on this mushroom, synthetic mushroom that you used, and they're showing you how everything works, what was the feeling, how you experienced this kind of new knowledge? Was it like, so you understand, it was like somebody tell you stuff and it's like, yeah, that sounds coherent or something? Or was it kind of like a remembering, like an, do you understand what I'm
Yeah,
with this?
absolutely. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to communicate this simply because of the number of iterations that I've had with these things. It's almost like so everybody has experience with this in different domains, like anything that people become experts in. But there's what you're describing is basically there's a certain conclusiveness to certain kinds of experiences. It's almost like you don't really need anybody else to tell you. You just kind of know that that's exactly how it is, because it's shown under this banner of truth. It's just like you just, like you said, you just kind of remember that that's the case. I call it just like a level of conclusiveness. It's almost like there's a matter of factness to it, right? The thing is, I've experienced that with a very large repertoire of variations. So basically, this conclusiveness, I've had a few experiences that are incompatible with one another that all had that, which made me understand, oh, okay, actually, what they can do, they can just impart this sense of conviction in you, but it doesn't mean that that's what's going on. And what really stood out about that experience with the 4ACO is that it was completely different than any other kind of experience I've had before, in that it was just like, okay, here it is. That's how it's all connected, basically. And it obviously also had this conclusiveness, but it was more like no one had anything to gain from showing me this. It was more like, you wanted to know, here it is. And it's almost like at that point, now it's your choice what you want to do with it. And this is why I always say, it doesn't mean that I think that necessarily it's exactly how things are. But if I'm reporting honestly exactly to your question, how it came across and it was presented under the banner of, this is how it is. Like, there's no left or right. This is exactly how things are. But it does not mean that I think that necessarily, and this is why by the way, I'm never buying anyone's version of anything, because I think that ultimately things are presented to us in the way that it's supposed to come to us in that moment, because it has some kind of a function that it serves. So everybody has their own world perception, everybody has their convictions, but ultimately it only matters if it translates to something that is actionable, either for oneself or, even better, for the greater good of all. There's in the modern spiritual zeitgeist, there's a very large downplaying of objectivity. It's almost like a dirty word, right? There's this very big tendency to say, "Oh, no. Well, this is old thinking. There's no such thing as objectivity." Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think that actually the ultimate truth is, it's almost like you can think of it like, yes, we have our own B stories, and we are absolutely responsible for them. So, and this is also what was shown to me. It was almost like a reconciliation between what people say in terms of ultimate reality, ultimate truth, and then personal truth. And there's a huge departure from what we call objectivity in these new ways of perceiving the world. My personal take, and this is me, this is just, my personal opinion, of course, but I actually think this will lead us astray. I think that's actually not a good way of looking at it. Because on the one hand, you definitely want to unlock your powers and you want to be empowered and you want to make sure that you focus on the things that you can create if you trust your own abilities to manifest a better world. But being completely untethered and being completely convinced that there's nothing but you, to me, that's already playing with solipsism, which to me is just it's a non sequitur, which is the big difference between, let's say, idealism, right? And the reason for that is because there has to be a balance between you trusting in your own ability to create a better world by manifesting the best one you can possibly imagine, but it has to be balanced with some humility. And what I'm noticing is that the second you start playing the game of it's all you, it's all just you're the creator, it actually kind of eliminates the humility part, and then people actually get lost. They start doing things that, again, are actually emanating from the ego, and they're not serving the greater good of all. There are absolutely other players in this reality that is not you. That is the other agents that are just like you would imagine in the old kind of like not in the naive physicalist perspective, but everybody have their own worlds. Now, it's true that you are the master of your own world, but it doesn't mean that there are no other worlds with other individuals occupying them, and they also need to be respected. There's a certain consensus that we all reach together, right? And to me, that is something that is de-emphasized to a dangerous degree at this point. And why does it matter? Well, if you build an inaccurate map in a very nuanced terrain, then the less the map resembles the territory, the more you are in danger of flying off a cliff one day. That's my take on that whole thing. So like there absolutely needs to be more of an kind of like awakening to our real true powers. I'm all absolutely on board with all of this. But it is my observation that the second people start going through what we would call the awakening, and this very enormous power and knowledge starts moving through them, if they're not well grounded in the understanding that they are playing a role, but they're not the only story in town, they start doing and saying things that are just unhinged. And this is how you get the Terrence Howard. This is how you get people that just like kind of like hijack the conversation in ways that are circular, not contributing anything. They're very much selfish. That would be my take on this.
Yeah, me personally, I also never got the sense of I'm the only player. But I was never getting when I was out of body, I was always aware this is where I am still, is still earthbound, no matter in which realm I was. So I've experienced something like what some people would say astral, mid to sometimes also higher astral, sometimes lower. And then there was something like parallel lives, which was a little bit is a different experience, and you kind of get like drawn into it. But all of this, what I experienced was always earthbound still, and I always was aware this is not all there is. There's still more outside of it. I'm still in the earthbound theme park, so to speak. And so I was just interested in the way you experienced your DMT, in the way of kind of what you would call conclusiveness of this was the way you felt about it. I had another question, but I forgot what I wanted to say.
Well, take a moment. I will bring in part RSD, which, by the way, feel free to tell us what your name is if you want, and then we can chat about what you wanted to talk about. You just have to unmute. I don't know if it's... And by the way, just to give you the etiquette of this particular chat, I don't, even though we obviously want to be respectful of one another, I don't have hard rules against just chiming in. So if somebody's talking, unless, of course, if we keep interrupting everybody, it's no go, but it's not muting. You shouldn't, you're not muted on my end. You should be able to unmute. Just click on the mic on the bottom and then you should be able to do it. And then there's like a little arrow next to it. Do you see it? Well, if you can't unmute it, then feel free to also text, no problem. But yeah, but basically, this is just in general, so everybody knows that if you're on the stage on Discord and all of a sudden you had a thought and you don't want to forget, I have no problem with you just saying like, hey, I'm sorry. I like, you can interrupt. There's no problem. Hassan, so good to see you, my brother. So good for you that you're joining. Looking forward for the film. Me too. U.S. Department of Justice. Okay. So would you say, how did you initially figure out the experiment with the laser? Just tried it for the first time a few days ago. It was fascinating to say, at least when I saw it. Yeah, I mean, that's what the movie is about. So it's going to be, I'm not going to be able to break the full story here. I was searching for whether there's a way to discern conclusively if the space is real or not. Why are you yelling, Chani? Why is it all caps? Oh, Stephanie, how are you? Good to see you. And yeah, so this is to you. Oh, by the way, what is your name, Flying High?
Jenny.
Jenny, nice to meet you. And you said you're from Germany?
Yes, I'm from Germany.
Cool. Where in Germany?
In Nuremberg.
Nuremberg. Amazing.
Nuremberg, yeah.
Are you from there originally, or are you born somewhere else and then moved there?
Yeah, no, I'm from Berlin, but I live here already a while in Nuremberg.
Interesting. Most people move to Berlin because it's like, kind of like a hotspot.
Yeah.
You moved away.
Yeah, no. These times are over. Too old for Berlin. Berlin is too stressful for me right now.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, it's a very stressful town.
Yeah. So what I wanted to share with you is that I tend to, at this point, kind of tone down my, like, it sometimes, so for example, when I say something like, it does not mean that I think that necessarily that is the case, but it was presented to me as if that's the ultimate truth. People sometimes are having a hard time parsing that. They're like, what do you mean? Like, you just said and you negated yourself. Well, no, I'm telling you that ultimately I understand that that you should always be open for revision. So here's a really good practice. And this takes a little bit of practice, but it's possible. So it's a really good practice. Whatever it is that you're super convinced of, you don't have to do it with anyone else, but see if you can do it with yourself. See if you can sit quietly and see if you can, for a second, entertain, but truly, like, imagine a situation in which you are all of a sudden becoming aware that everything you thought you were convinced of is wrong. Just wrong. Just it's not true. If you can do that, you're going to be in a much better standing in general. It will also strengthen your ability to stand on whatever it is that you're actually convinced of. To me, knowledge is a state of being, and it's not unmovable, but it is stable. So the difference between kind of assuming something that you kind of, teetering between a few points of view and then a certain level of conviction because there's enough information, then, okay, then now you can say you know it. And this is not a statement that is true for infinity. Like, you can know something because it's the best point of view you can currently hold given the information you have, but you should always be open for revision. And there's no there's nothing weird about that. Like, you can just change your mind when new information comes in. You should not tangle your psychology with what you think you understand about the world, and most people always do. It becomes part of their identity, and then it's very difficult to shake off, because it means that you literally have to kill part of yourself if you want to let go of it. So it's a really good practice to try and sit and you will see how uncomfortable you are if you really do that. If you didn't feel uncomfortable, you didn't actually do it. You should feel uncomfortable when you're doing that. And that start small. Start with politics. I know it sounds like, what? Politics is huge. No, that's small. That is where how high the bar is. Politics is small. If you're incapable of entertaining that everything you thought and you convinced in politics is wrong, you stand no chance of playing this real game, the one that we're talking about, reality. So try your hardest. Just put yourself in this really uncomfortable place of like, wait, what if all the people that are like telling, like, if I'm actually wrong about all of it? Just play with that. That it should be interesting to you why you get so uncomfortable. And then if you pass that and you do it a few times, then go to something bigger, like some philosophical convictions you have about how the world is constructed. That I would say that I really encourage people to do that, because it makes things a lot more fluid. And because, when you do a lot of psychedelics, one thing that becomes very clear is that almost anything can all of a sudden be something else. Not just appear as something else, but be in your presence in such a way that it is now something else entirely. And you just have to deal with that. You just have to live. And by the way, I just remember what I wanted to say to you, Jenny, which is when you equated it to a dream. Well, sorry, when you said it's really hard to explain how there's this all of a sudden you just kind of know. Well, actually, I think that there's a really good equivalence for that in dreams, because in dreams we all of a sudden, oh, you live this completely different life, and you're like in love with this person that you've never met before, and you're like, okay, you're just like there. And then when you wake up, you're like, wait, who was that? I don't even know this person. But you were so convinced at everything. And that's because, well, there's like, you can slap any explanation you want on it. The simple explanation is that your prefrontal cortex wasn't online, so you don't really make like, you don't track moment to moment, so to speak. You don't have an overarching image of how things track. So you're more like truly in the moment. But that's a really good example of this, where you're just like convinced of something that actually you've never seen before and you probably will never see again. And yet it was as real for you as anything else. So I always say, and it's only a little bit tongue in cheek, because honestly, I mean it more seriously than not. I am of the exact opposite opinion that this is Maya. This is the one thing that can't possibly be an illusion. So not only this is not an illusion, this is the one thing you can absolutely take to the bank. What you're experiencing right now, right in front of you. That's the only thing you know for sure. Everything else is a story, including the story that this is an illusion. And if you can't penetrate through this fact, you've been taken by an idea that presented itself as a reality to you. You can say that there's deeper perceptions, there's deeper layers of reality, but that's not the same as saying as this is fake. This is not fake. If you're going to experience pain right now, it's going to be as real as it's going to get. That is your one reality. What up, Nico? How you doing, brother? Oh, we have a lot of comments on TikTok. What up, Brian? There we go.
Wow,
What?
this is working.
Look at that.
Am I coming through loud and clear?
You are. And before you start, just now that we have a little bit more listeners, if you guys want to go and follow from Twitch and help our channel grow there, go to LaserX83 on Twitch. LaserX83. Go ahead, brother.
Thank you, Danny. So I guess
I've got a couple of points, but I don't want to take up too much time.
Oh, you're good.
I was born kind of agnostic. So I was raised agnostic, and kind of leaned atheist for most of my life. I'm 43 now. About 4 years ago, I tried mushrooms for the first time. And then within the same year, I tried DMT, and it kind of transformed my theology. So I kind of now inclined to lean towards the fact that there is a God, but we can get, if we want to talk about that later, that's different. But just recently, so I tried it about between 5 and 10 times over the last 4 years. This year in July, I had one of the most transformative experiences of my life, and again, that's a separate story, but it made me think of an idea. So I listen to a lot of podcasts with the likes of Alex O'Connor, who likes to debate theology, and sometimes from the stance of being atheist. And I know that physicists nowadays are starting to suggest that maybe consciousness is fundamental to the universe. And everyone kind of gets around it, but nobody's really touching on something. And I had this idea that I just wanted to put in your hands, really, to see if you could play with it. And it's the idea of, like, perhaps that we all exist within the mind of God. And the way I would, the thought experiment I wanted to share with you was, like, if I ask you to picture in your mind a brightly lit aircraft hangar with a grey shiny floor, with bright fluorescent lights on the roof, on the ceiling, and then in the middle is like a blue sports car with white stripes down the middle. That thing exists in your mind all the time that you're thinking about it. And if I asked you to pan around that car, you could do so. You could zoom in, you could zoom out. And then if I asked you to fill that aircraft hangar with, say, a few people, and we can only do so much because we only have so much cognitive ability, but let's say you were a powerful being, like a god, you can give those individuals, say, some sort of autonomy that they could go off and start walking around the hangar themselves. And if they become curious about their environment and they develop the tools to start inspecting their environment, then at some stage they'll probably get to the point where they could say, hey, consciousness seems to be fundamental to this environment. Well, of course it is, because it's all your consciousness. And so perhaps there is, like, different levels. So that consciousness exists all the way through. And perhaps the individuals within that environment have different cognitive ability. So even, say, the wall of the aircraft hangar has some sort of consciousness, because if I'm asking you to pan around the aircraft hangar, you are witnessing all the way through that aircraft hangar, looking at it from every point of view. You're the wall, and then you're the ceiling, and then you're the light. All of that is you. You're the observer.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you were to go to, say, one of the people that's walking around, they have more cognitive ability to do a problem solving. Is that making any concept? I'm a very undereducated man, but I wanted to put
this position
in the hands of yourself.
This position is actually not panpsychism. This position is called idealism. That's the philosophical. Yeah.
Sorry.
And in fact, oh no, don't apologize. That's exactly my my conviction that that's what's going on. So the best conversation on this topic is on the Alex O'Connor channel was actually with Bernardo Castro. Bernardo Castro was probably the best modern proponent of analytic idealism. He's a double PhD, guys who knows his technical stuff, his neuroscience, his physics, and he holds this position very strongly. And if you watch Alex O'Connor, you should watch this conversation. It basically will outline, I think, exactly what you just said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so you did that.
Oh, yeah. This is one of the oldest positions, called idealism. So basically, the difference between panpsychism and idealism is that in panpsychism, you have an already existing world of some kind that has its own nature. And in it, you have some kind of a field or something with the quality of consciousness permeating through it. And every single thing, like a quantum field of some sort of consciousness. And then every time this quantum field interacts with something, the other fields, it gives them the property of consciousness, just like certain fields give the property of magnetism, electromagnetism, and so on and so forth. But there's a multiplicity there in panpsychism. In idealism, it's a unitary vision of the world, which means that everything is consciousness. It's not the same. It doesn't mean that it's just like your consciousness, by the way. And there's some, I mean, obviously, the first thing to admit is who knows. Let's just admit that first. But then if we're already playing that game, then there's actually reasons to think that the unitary consciousness does not experience itself, like not in the way that we experience ourselves, because the experience of the self is contingent of something else. The self is always in relationship to the rest of what it's not the self, right? So there's like outwards pointing arrows, outwards pointing vectors that are saying you're in here, the rest is out there. And even if you're saying that's an illusion, okay, but in the moment, there's this experience of out there and in here, right? So there's a boundary of some sort beyond which it's no longer me, no longer the self. And within that boundary is the me, the self. And the fact that it's still, if you really get down to it, it's kind of murky. It doesn't mean that that's not a thing. Like that's an object that exists in existence, and you can kind of differentiate between yourself and the rest. The reason I'm hammering this point is because when you're talking about the all, the everything, the consciousness that is the all, it by definition does not have an external space. There's nothing it is in relationship to. There's nothing outside of it. So, because there's no outwards pointing arrows, there's no inwards pointing arrows as relationship to it. Therefore, it will most likely just be kind of like a unitary experience that has no agency. It's just kind of there. It's just kind of like the kind of the fabric that is kind of like made out of it makes everything up. But it wouldn't be like in this image that you just described, which is like God imagining. They would just be imagining, but no conscious agent imagining it. And that obviously is very different than the perception of, let's say, any monotheistic religions in which no, God is like it is the all. Well, like Hassan was explaining, like in Islam, you know, God is the all, but God is an agent that experiences also everything. Like it is a thing that is experiencing, right? And this image is different than that. In the end, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, to be fair, that kind of mirrors my transformative DMT experience. Was that I guess I went into it with so many questions. Like, you know, for the longest time, I've been thinking, is there a God? And you know, what is this reality and all that sort of stuff. And as I went into the experience, it kind of there was this. I guess there was this vision of everything starting to point towards me. I think I vaguely remember eyes, but this warm, enveloping feeling that said, "Do you really want to know? Do you really want to know?" And I was like, "Yes, I want to understand what is all of this." And it kind of said to me, "It's you. It's all you." And so I was kind of. I remember I was hugging myself. And I was going, it's me. What is it like? Because I'd heard that phrase before, like, you know, the universe, you are the universe, whatever. The kingdom is within you. And I was like, it's me. But then the eyes turned sinister, and it was looking at me, and it said, "You get it? It's you. It's only you." And it kind of shot me into this space where it was kind of showing me what it's like to be this God, say, and it was just in a black void. I was a light, and I could see a little bit of light emanating from me, but I was just on, and I was lonely. There was nothing for eternity, and I was just by myself.
The ultimate loneliness. Yep.
The thoughts that were coming to me, that all of this stuff that was telling me this it was like the ramblings of a crazy man. It was in my own mind. It was me telling me. It's like trying to work out. So it kind of felt to me as though, there is this lonely thing that's on and can't turn off, and perhaps it created all of this to experience something because it's better than the eternal nothing.
Yep. If you watch my conversation with Zoltan Bathory on my channel on YouTube, there's a conversation with Zoltan Bathory, who's the is the founder of that band Five Finger Death Punch, and he's like super successful, basically everything he does in life. And he basically is kind of like a master manifester. He was he created like a little kingdom for himself in this life, in business, with music, with everything. Really, he's very, very successful at everything he does. And he attributes it to his ability to manifest and actually control his own reality. And he talks about, he has a lot of experience with psychedelics, and he was talking about this experience, exactly what you described. And that's actually a very common experience. It's called the void, where you there's ultimate loneliness, right? And we can fill hours of conversation just about the void. My take on the void is that is actually probably very close to the state of affairs, but it is still experienced through your ego. That's why it feels so lonely. An agent that finds himself or herself experiencing the ultimate can't handle it because it is bound by a shell. And this is why the unitary one also doesn't have that, because otherwise you would have to experience this loneliness forever. And that's, and the truth is that there's so many explanations of this thing on offer that I am not willing to sign off on any of them. I'm going by what I'm experiencing in the moment, which is a much more kind of like Buddhistic kind of approach, because the truth is that, like we said, there's a lot of convictions you can occupy in different moments, and some people would say that actually the commitment. Well, actually, Hassan just joined us. How are you, brother? And I'm sure Hassan can speak to this because he's devoutly religious, and there is this. I don't want to call it attitude because I think it cheapens it, but there is this strategy to go through this, which I think is developed by the major religions, which is to basically handle this fact en masse together. And to some degree, it basically protects us from this kind of like ultimate understanding, and also it weaves a certain path that guarantees a higher statistical probability that we're going to end up in a blissful place forever versus a very, very hellish place forever. Because you can spin it in an infinite number of ways. So, for example, one of not all, but there are some sects in Buddhism that kind of believe that basically the reason that you want to practice having the ability to just drop into the present moment is because when you fully detach, so you're no longer tethered by content, thoughts, and connection, like you being the Buddha said attachment is suffering, period. That was his if you the golden rule, right, which is like summarize Christianity, which is like love your neighbor as thyself, right? So Buddhism can be summarized according to this one phrase that the Buddha said: attachment is suffering. All attachment, to good things, to bad things, that's what causes suffering. So the reason that there's this big emphasis on detachment is because in this final moment before you transition, in this final breath you take, the exact imprint that you've embedded in the body carries through with you into kind of infinity. So if you are a person who tends to like suffer a lot, and most of the moments in your life are filled with suffering because you don't know how to control it or for any other reason, you will carry this with you forever. And this is why this practice is so important, to just like bring yourself to a neutral state before you transition. And there's so many different ways in which you can twist this. And this is why, so what I'm going to do, I don't know what changed here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to just say a final line, and then I'll bring Hassan in to respond, because I think he will have a lot of beautiful things to say on this. And then feel free to also chime in and say what you think. But the last thing I want to say is, because I personally was exposed to so many different experiences that were very convincing, and some of them were mutually exclusive. So like they actually negate one another, but they were all very convincing. And I've seen so many different people in person going through things that I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I really like I've experienced so much of this that at this, and also I read and I listen and I truly listen when people tell me what they believe. Um, at this point, the only thing that I know for sure is that the only thing I know is what's in front of me right now. That's it. Like it's really there's no real way to know anything beyond that for me. Hassan, how are you, brother?
Great, brother. Really enjoyed this discussion, man. A lot of beautiful points.
Thank you, and I'm glad you joined.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, no, a lot of great points that I really appreciate. I think, as you mentioned, I'm somebody who's very passionate about faith, spirituality, and then exploring the intersectionality between faith, spirituality, religion, scripture, psychedelics, and quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and the theories behind it. And the more I've delved into all of these spaces, the more I see a very strong connection between all of them. And I really appreciated your point about challenging what you believe, because I think that's what meditation can do, what psychedelics can do, is you may perceive this as something to be reality, and then you all of a sudden realize that perhaps it isn't. And I think psychedelics push people to question. And I really appreciate the other previous speaker who mentioned that, he was sort of in an atheist perspective until his psychedelic experience. And now he believes there's a higher power, there may be God. I also appreciate the message that you mentioned about detachment, right? So attachment in this world must lead to suffering and will lead to suffering, because everything in this realm is finite, perishing, and temporary. So whatever you're attached to, you will lose, or it will lose you. You will not have it forever, and therefore there is the suffering of loss. So in the Islamic and in the Sufi spiritual path, the whole essence is to detach from everything except God. So it is to attach to the infinite. If you're attached to the infinite, who's the source of everything, then in a sense there is never any suffering, because you're always connected to the source of joy, of love, of peace, of beauty, of all the feelings that you ever feel and experience, that you love, that you enjoy. He's the source of it. And I use the word he very loosely, because for us, God is the sustainer of everything that is not sustained by anything. He's not a man. He's not an object. It's beyond our ability to fully comprehend him within this realm. And I think really, if we were to fully realize how great the source is, the creator is, God is, whatever you want to call him, and how near he is to us, we probably would cease to function. I think we would be lost. I mean, you would essentially be a perpetual ego death, lost in wonder at his infinite greatness and his infinite beauty. But the idea for us is to detach from all that is finite and attach only to that which is infinite. And that's why the essence of the Islamic creed, it starts with la, no, negation, no, ilah, God, illa, except for God. And so we try to detach our hearts from being attached to anything finite and attach only to the infinite one. The idea is to have the world within our hands, that we can use it. We can use the world, the wealth, the power, the position, the influence, the fame, whatever we have of these temporary material things, to serve humanity, to make the world better. But the wealth, the status, the power, the name, the position should never enter our heart. We should never be attached to it, because it is temporary after all. The other point, because I don't want to just talk too much right now, but the other point I wanted to really quickly mention, the idea of consciousness. So in sort of the spiritual path that I've studied, we definitely have this theory and this belief that everything in existence has a level of consciousness. The Quran in particular says everything glorifies the creator, but you don't understand their praise. And, sort of if you study science, you'll see everything has a vibration. Everything emits a level of sound. Everything has a frequency. From us as a spiritual perspective, we believe that everything, the trees, the mountains, the oceans, the stars, the moon, everything has its own level of consciousness, and that they even bear witness to how we live our life, and that everything in the creation will be a witness for us or against us. Were we a source of goodness for the universe around us, or were we a source of harm for the world around us? So we are taught to treat everything with sanctity and honor, because we believe they all have a different level of consciousness, and they all express praise to the source, the creator, whether we understand it or not.
Yeah, I mean, this is very close to. Thank you for so much for sharing all this. It's very close to, I think, what my general perception is. I guess what I'm expressing in general is this attempt to come at the world with the most neutral way I possibly can, which of course you can never nullify it completely because there's always all these like invisible biases that we carry. But to the extent that I can, I'm trying to become aware of as many of them as possible. And one thought experiment that I always do whenever I feel a little lost about something is I always ask myself, what would it be like to wake up on a deserted island by myself and not remember anything? What would be the things that I would discover from that point of view? Those are the things that I think I can trust more than anything. Because the second we come in contact with other people and their convictions and everything that is already laid out before us, it very often leads to things that are personal that are confused for universal. But I do think that throughout the ages, the sages created these frameworks because they kind of went very deep and they found some universal truths that can be carried through culture, which is how we store larger information. But because we do know it is not quite true to say that every single religion believes the same thing at the core. There's definitely major differences that sometimes kind of fly in the face of one another, and you can say that the sentiment towards the divine is probably very similar. That sentiment itself, but this is exactly my point. That the second it starts being conflated with what is overlaid on top of it, which is how people tell the story about it. To me, and when I say to me, I do mean like just how I choose to live my life. I prefer to stay away from these structures because I've already experienced so many cycles in my life where I changed my mind 180 degrees about things, and if I could in my life, in good faith, be convinced of something and then be absolutely convinced of the opposite. To me, that's a sign that the ground I'm standing on conceptually is a lot less stable than what I can experience in the exact present moment. And because I do believe that, I would say that even in most religions, the belief is that the closer you are to the present moment, the closer you are to the Creator. I do trust what happens right here, right now, much more. The closer you can get to every single instance like that, I feel closer to what divinity really is. And this takes a little bit of practice, but when you do practice, you all of a sudden discover that it's actually true. One of the biggest emphases of Buddha was that you are your own master, not in the vain sense, not in the egoic sense, but in the sense that and this is definitely goes against Christianity or Islam, but if you can pray all day according to the Buddha, and it's not going to help you. What's going to help is if you can connect to that. Praying is one way to put your attention in the right place. And that can, as a secondary element, can actually bring you closer to the divine. But the only way truly to connect with it is to actually do that. Just like you're moving your arm. So just like you have to practice how to place your attention in a way that is aligned with what the rest of the world and divinity is doing. And all of a sudden you feel you're part of it. You just see it. And because I've practiced and I've experienced it, I know it's true. It's true. One of the, a lot of it, it's not like Buddhists don't believe anything pretty, out there. Like there's definitely a lot of dogma. But if you go to the actual practice, the practice de-emphasizes belief quite strongly. It emphasizes practice. So like if you believe whatever it is you believe, if you practice, you can see if it either works or it doesn't. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then the famous line that Eckhart Tolle always uses, which is like, it doesn't matter if it's true. The question is it true for you? Like, can you actually experience this versus just kind of like taking somebody's word for it? And also, Gary, I'm saying hi, brother. I know that you tend to like to stay in the background, but if you feel like if you have anything to chime in, please do. Anyone looking forward to death without hurry? What does that mean, Chris? But go ahead, Alessandro.
So I really liked the example you gave of the desert island. So, the idea is if someone just found themselves conscious and present and alive in a desert island, could they come to understand reality and the purpose of life? And even if there's a sense of salvation or being successful after life, is that possible? And I absolutely believe it is. I think truth is innate. If we come from a source, you know, I like the idea of saying remembering. I think our souls existed before they were put in this physical body, and there's a longing to reconnect with that truth. And I think it's very possible that, you know, someone who's isolated and hasn't heard of the great mystics and saints and prophets of humanity, but found themselves separate from it all through reflection, through pondering, would ultimately recognize that there is a source that brought about everything that exists. And that source is one, and that would be enough for them. They don't need to have a specific proclamation or belief system or a special system of prayers for them to achieve salvation. If they just follow their heart, they would be successful. And I feel that the human heart already is pre-programmed with morality, with right or wrong. You know, the Prophet Muhammad said, check with your heart, no matter what the people tell you. So someone on their own who has a pure nature that has not been corrupted by society would naturally, following their heart, know it is not good to injure others or to kill for sport without eating, or to, you know, engage in various vices that are harmful. I feel like we're pre-programmed with morality, and that comes from remembering our nature and where we came from.
You know, I find that interesting because I've thought about this sort of thing a lot, and I've really struggled with the morality side of things because I have two young sons. One's 3, one's 7, and I've been watching them develop, and they're developing differently because the first son didn't, he was an only child for many years, and then the youngest son has only ever known that he's got a bigger brother, and the thing is that children, for example, by nature are not, they don't fit well into society. You have to train them to not be selfish and these sorts of things. You know, their instincts are to manipulate the world around them and people, and you have to kind of train them to, don't steal, don't hit, don't smack your brother, all these sorts of things. So I don't know. I mean, at the same time, I have a deep sense of morality, but I don't know where that's come from. I think it's happened over years. So I find that concept very, very interesting.
And by the way, happy birthday to your son, Hassan. It's his 16th birthday.
Yeah. It's a beautiful day. He just turned 16. I took him with me to California. We had a charity event and just a nice dinner. It's been a beautiful day. Thank you so much for the kind wishes.
Amazing. 16 is such a this is a coming of age for sure.
I'm feeling old.
Wait till he's gonna have children. Then it's like being a grandpa. It's crazy. You know, it's to me, and again, this is kind of like, well, I'll just speak for myself, obviously. So to me, if I have to take the most neutral position I can, I think that morality stems from, I would agree that in some way you can say it's from the soul's remembrance, and whatever primordial state our consciousness resides in before it comes into life or lives, depending on what people believe, there's an innate understanding of the nature of experience and all of its facets. And what that means is that you don't need a grant or a study, or you don't need to investigate it from a third person perspective to know what suffering is, because suffering is just a quality of experience that is innately understood by any experiencer. It doesn't make any sense. Of like, are you really suffering? Well, yes, that's what the definition of it, right? So like, of course you can change your orientation to it, which is a whole conversation all by itself, which is a lot of Buddhism kind of rests on that, which is that the second you free yourself from the definition that strong sensations are suffering, then the ultimate bliss and the ultimate suffering, they become one and the same. They have no difference whatsoever. And that's when you're fully liberated, because it doesn't matter where you are, how you are, when you are, makes no difference whatsoever. It's all the same to you, which sounds bland, but that is the actual liberation, because it doesn't actually matter where you land. And under that, I think that there's just, if you think of whatever this place is, that let's just use, for simplicity terms, let's use the word soul. All the souls reside. It is a place where all the information and the understanding, ultimate understanding, resides. So like there's an there's an innate understanding of what suffering and what enjoyment is. So if you are, for no other reason but your own enjoyment, cause suffering to another unit of any kind, that would be the definition of evil, because there's no benefit to it whatsoever, and yet for your own pleasure, like for the most selfish reasons, you're causing the suffering of someone else. And I think it's not. Now, if you're going to get into this conversation with a philosopher, they're going to start going through these like weird wiggles where they go, no, you can't actually justify it in this way. And I think the mistake there is that they're trying to analyze experience almost like an equation. It's like, well, if 2 + 2 = this, it's like, well, that's not how experience works, though, because you have these intrinsic properties, and everybody knows the difference, right? We on this level of emergence, we know the difference between deep sorrow and like a real beautiful enjoyment when you spend your time with your children and things like this. So I think that there's just, it's when the descriptive game becomes pathological is when we start getting confused about this. I think that when this is what happens very often in philosophy, to my mind, which is like we think that the way to understand everything is through the description, when in reality, the only way to truly understand something is to allow yourself to fully drop into what it's like to have that moment.
Yeah, I think something I was thinking about recently was that having not been religious for most of my life, and I still don't follow any of the mainstream theologies, but but I guess you'd say I'm more spiritual now. But I believe there is a creator and all this sort of stuff. But when it comes down to morality, like I'm kind of what's the word, bitter, or perhaps bitter that there was no guidebook given to us at birth. It's not like there's a manual. I know there's the Bible and there's the Quran and these sorts of things, but they were written by man. And so I'm like, if we're put on this earth and we're supposed to live in a certain way, I'm like, well, where's that guidebook? Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
It's written in the language of experience itself. That's exactly what I'm saying. So like we can, this is where it gets a little.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is that I guess I feel like because perhaps we're all the same thing experiencing itself, that if you're being unkind to somebody, you're being unkind to yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead, Hassan.
I agree with that. I would push back a little bit, although
please,
I wasn't introduced because I don't want to come off as preachy, but
no, please.
Absolutely reject the idea that humanity does not have a guidebook, right? Because why would the Creator create us without guidance that can be found, that has never been changed from Him? That doesn't make sense to me. And I feel like the truth cannot be something that can only be found through individual experiences like psychedelics. It's a very subjective experience. I really appreciate what Dan said earlier about potentially feeling conviction, but that doesn't necessarily mean what you've felt conviction about is actually accurate. So for me, I've studied the Quran in depth. It's the only holy scripture that claims to be from God, that historically was never changed. There's countless scientific miracles in it that's just impossible for Muhammad, who was illiterate, could not read or write, for him to know 1400 years ago. So no, I would say be open to the idea. Now, don't take my word for it. Look into it, but be open to the idea that there is divine revelation that's never been changed, that simply answers the question. And maybe the answer is simple. Maybe the answer is just enjoy living, appreciate the gift of existence, and be grateful and give back to others. Maybe it's just that.
Yeah.
And
during my experience, I kind of I was given kind of this message that it's hard to put into words, but it was like, do whatever you want, just do any, like the world is yours to experience. Be good, be bad, do whatever. everything is okay. Everything is okay. I guess that was the phrase or that I would take from it is it's like everything is okay.
And by the way,
which is why there's horrors in the world and stuff like that.
well, it also is why. Well, here's the thing: everything is okay, but I think that the spirit with which this is spoken is the only way for you to act. Like the only way where this is going to be beneficial for you in the long run is if you pay really close attention. Because if you pay really close attention, the second you're going to start doing whatever it is, and everything is okay, but the second that you start doing it, if you are paying attention, you will find out very quickly why this direction is not the one that makes you happy. Or like you can say, oh, what do you mean? Like I'm just going to get, there's this really hot chick at the bar, and I'm like, what, she looks kind of hammered and lonely, but like who cares? Like we're both going to have fun, right? And then if you're paying attention and you go and you do that, right? Now it's a whole other story. If you fall in love, you have kids, and it's all like a beautiful love story, that's great. But if you just keep doing these like one night stands, which on the surface of it, there's nothing immoral about this, but the part that if you most people just kind of stop paying attention. But if you would pay attention, you would realize, wait a second, I feel emptier every time. If you would pay attention, because the thing that was there that you actually were searching for was the connection, not the physical act. And the second you start looking away from the actual connection part, because ultimately it's all kind of like leading to the connection with source, the connection with whatever the core of reality. I agree with Hassan in that regard. So if you only look for the physical for answers and you keep not paying attention, you will make a mess. But if you are paying attention, then doing whatever is actually a really good way to go about it, because it will be a really good error correcting mechanism for you to realize, interesting. Okay, I do feel emptier here. Maybe let me try something else here. Maybe I will try actually to like engage in a different way, not just get like physical, but like actually find out, like actually look deeper into the other person, into what happens to me and who I see myself in the world in relationship to other people. This ability to look deeper beyond what your immediate gratification brings. And in fact, one of the kind of I don't it was kind of like a combination of what I've experienced and what I've kind of constructed. The best definition I've ever came that is the most secular I could muster of good and evil is that there's these two energies and kind of like operating in reality, and they're both required to make the whole thing happen. So the evil part would be what we call evil, but it has a much larger thing behind it. Like it's not what we think it is, right? It's everything that has to do with the shorter cycles. It's closer and closer and closer. And then the what we would call good or light, it's more like longer arcs. Like it's open-ended. It's very like it shoots for the distance. And you need
Delayed gratification.
in every possible way you can imagine it. So if you think about it, so like you need like if you the closer it is to just you, right? It's kind of like just me, right? Okay, that's closer to what you would call evil, because you actually care less and less and less about like more. You're just like for immediately just for me right now. And the more open-ended it is, the more you include others and other things in your calculations of why you do things and how you do them, the more we can I think we can quite safely say, okay, that's a kind of like a more good like kind of operating system, right? But what's interesting is that you need a balance. So like if you have no short-sighted things, like if you have no closures of any kind, there's no structure, nothing can be made ever. But if you just go long, nothing ever happens. Something has to close at a certain period to make something appear, right? But so basically you have the if you do too much short-sighted things, the structure becomes too rigid. It can no longer operate. It just kind of like becomes like a stale thing that doesn't actually like it's just too rigid, right? Bamboo survives because it has stability. So if it's you need the open-ended to allow it to breathe, right? But if it's just open-ended, nothing ever happens. And you can connect it to the feminine and the masculine. The masculine tries to create more structure. The feminine is a little bit more open-ended. There's all kinds of like And it's not like it's exactly our very naive idea of what good and evil is. But if you look at the yin yang, at the actual symbol, here's what's interesting. If you notice, at the white part, they kind of flow into one another, right? There's this flowy thing in the middle. But if you notice, the white part has a black circle in it, and vice versa, right? So the way I'm reading it is, good or light contains the ultimate darkness in the middle of it, at the heart of it. And evil contains the ultimate light. So it's like they're holding each other's hearts, so to speak. So there's this infinite relationship between what they actually are, and they're unfolding together is what gives rise to what reality is doing. But ultimately, they're one unified kind of like a thing, right? So that is obviously very far from, let's say, what Hassan would agree with, probably, because even though I am learning from him a lot more, but that in Islam you have a lot of ideas that translate to more modern ideas like multiverse and ideas that have to do with like what is the ultimate state of affairs, and God is all unified thing, which is very similar to kind of like some of very new ideas in spirituality in terms of the unified self. But it still also holds the monotheistic idea that no, God is everything, but it is separate than what you are. Like there's definitely a difference. But I would say that to me, these ideas, they have to do some work. Like they can't just be existing in this philosophical framework. And again, this is where religions, so like official religions, right? Islam, Judaism, Christianity, the work that they're doing is that they're unifying entire communities of people around these ideas in such a way that it structures a life. And if that life looks like a good life, well, that's the work that it's doing. And to my mind, good. That's great. That's the thing. Now, again, this is not to throw any diminishment of what they might be at the core. I'm very open to the possibility that one or maybe all of them in some form are actually exactly correct. Because like I said, I had a vision around that which kind of confused me, to be honest. But ultimately, to me, because I know we're very fallible, and because I've experienced personally how crazy different certain convictions can be, the track record of what kind of life you lead and what kind of thing you leave in your wake, what happens when you live your life that way. I'm in the habit of saying, if you look back and you really look like, as critically as you possibly can at your own trajectory in life, if you feel very introspective, what does it look like when you leave the room? Do people feel sad that you left, or they're relieved that you left? What does it look like financially? What does it look like in terms of, did you contribute something? How do relationships that ended for you look like? Like all of these things, they're hints what you left in your wake, whether what you believed and therefore what kind of life it made you live had this thing that actually does some work. And in the case of big religions, they have their own track record. Like there's a lot of we can say a lot of good and bad things about religions because they were the thing that propagated most of history. So you can always point to an event and say, oh, look, this is what it caused, this is all bad. Oh no, look at this, like it made the nuclear family more of a strong idea, which is very important. So they definitely have something by which the religions have something by which they're measured, because there's a track record of them operating. And when we're playing with these new ideas and we're trying to kind of like rediscover from scratch, it's the less traveled path. It's a much more lonely path, and that's fine. That's for some people, where you go and explore by yourself. The good thing in it is that you might discover things in new and novel ways that might even want other people to travel through that path. The negative part of it is that it's also very easy to get lost. So in that regard, it's always better to travel in a pack for most people, I would say. And this is why I used to kind of like think that religion is just, like kind of a waste of time. But now I don't think that anymore, because I understand that actually hey, not everybody are going to go and do psychedelics. Not everybody are going to go and spend 20 years in an ashram and like sit and meditate. It might be easier to actually adopt a belief system that makes you live a regular life in which you don't have to do any substances. You just go, like you're a normal person, and it can still make you lead a good life. And again, I'm in full awareness that, for example, with that point, like Hassan, for example, would disagree because the devoutness of his religion is part of the virtue, and I understand that. But to me, it's very important to kind of keep as much as I can a neutral frame. So, and this is I even spoke to you about this, Hassan. I know you remember, which is how do we take certain ideas from one religion? Where can we stand where another religion would also make sense of it? Like where is that thing? And to me, that's the most valuable thing.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective. No, you go ahead, please. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just going to say that there's a point there that is that I'm kind of the same belief. I don't. The one thing I know is that I know nothing. As Marcus Aurelius said, it's like so I can gather as much information as I can, and I'll tend to lean one way or the other depending on what the evidence is. But I just don't feel educated enough to dedicate my life to one theology.
Yeah, and I was going to say that honestly, even the times you say we may disagree on this, honestly, always 80-90% of what you say, Danny, is always very consistent with sort of the faith and the tradition as we've studied it. I think the universal common denominator between faiths, I believe, was always appreciation. That there's a higher power. We come from that higher power. We will return to that higher power, and we will be accountable for how we lived our life, and that can mean multiple things, right? So in some tradition, it's karma, right? As you treat others, so will happen to you. In another, it's how your soul is being programmed, and the imprint you leave on your soul that will last with you for all eternity. But I think the universal message often is very similar. We come from God, we return to God, be grateful in the meantime. And things aren't always as they appear. I even like the yin and yang symbol, because a lot of times in life, we believe evil may happen to us, or evil has happened to us. But the way I see it is life is a school to train your soul. So even when the most difficult things happen to you that could be considered evil happening to you, it may not be. Perhaps you're learning patience. Perhaps you're learning gratitude. Perhaps you're learning forbearance. Perhaps you're learning forgiveness. Perhaps you're learning to detach from this material world. So I actually have the belief that truly, while we can technically do evil to others, and in doing evil to others, we're doing evil to ourselves. In fact, in the Islamic tradition, the concept of sin is that we've wronged ourselves, not the Creator, because He's infinite and can't be hurt. But when we do evil things, we're actually just hurting ourselves. And so in that respect, the truth of the matter is, I believe you can live a life where no evil can ever happen to you, because any pain, any suffering, any loss can lead you to grow in greater ways that you couldn't without that. So you can really have the mindset that no evil ever happens, whether it's a divorce, a death, an illness, a loss. There is always goodness that can be found within it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I find it incredible that people can devote themselves to a religion like this, because for me, it took me to see it, to believe it. That's so I find it incredible when people haven't had like a transcendent experience and they still believe all of these things anyway. It's amazing.
I had a sorry, go ahead, finish this thought. I apologize, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was just going to say that I heard somebody once say that if you're not living like a moral life or whatever, that it's not like you're going to go to hell. It's like you'll be living it. That is the that lifestyle of the hedonistic, just pleasure in yourself or whatever, and getting into these cycles, as you said, short-term pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
That is living in hell.
Yeah, and that's exactly the karmic idea is not of reward or punishment, is one of state of affairs. So by you performing a thing that is what religions would consider sinful, that imprint you have to be really asleep to not realize that you actually just hurt yourself. Like, you actually created pain. You didn't realize this because you were too bamboozled by the immediate gratification you wanted. But the truth is that the feeling you just created was empty, and then you run to the next moment. You're trying to escape that, and you're trying to escape that. Well, you never escape it because it just accumulates, and eventually you run out of where to escape because the life ends. And now everything you accumulated behind you that you're running away from hits you from the back. And then if you haven't processed it, if you haven't actually went through the moment and transmuted every single moment into something that is universally, quote unquote, positive, then the entire weight of all your past actions will simply ram into you all at once. And that's basically what karma is. It's not like somebody's punishing you. You're literally doing it as you go. And one thing I want to say is that actually, to your comment about, like, being amazed by people being able to follow this faith, Hassan can correct me if I'm wrong there, but I've experienced this with a few people that I've known in my life that are Christians, that only later in life I realized, that people would say, like, I feel the presence of God with me. And as someone who my whole life I was basically non-religious, um, I was like, oh, like I was never one of these kind of, like, like people like atheists who's trying to take God away from you. That was never my style. I never really cared for that. It's not. I didn't see the point of that. Um, but so I would accept that what they're saying is like, okay, that's their experience. But I'm like, in my head, it was like, yeah, there's just my impression was they simply haven't experienced enough to know that what they're experiencing right now is actually pretty common, and they're just framing it in terms of God. That was my impression. And then later, when I when I had a lot of my own experiences, not with what you would call kind of like even though I had one experience in which you can categorize it as the biblical God, like I've kind of been in the presence of that, and that was not in that crazy vision that I've shared with you, Hassan, the other day. That was in a completely different time, but I was in the presence of something that the scale of it could not match anything else but the Lord, right? Like, it just didn't have any other framing that would match that, the grandiosity of that, what that was. But I started to understand, and then I spoke with my now wife, and she was raised Catholic, but she was never like really religious. But then she told me that when she was younger and when she would pray, it was a very clear presence that she knew could not have been anything else but God. And I said, "But what do you mean?" Then, because I know her so well and I trust her assessment so good, because she's actually very critical. Like, she's a very critical thinker. So I asked her point blank. I said, "Well, what do you mean? Like, can't you like say that maybe it's I don't know, like just like a really strong euphoria or something? Like, why can't we categorize as that? Why can't it be that?" And she said, "It can't. It just can't." It's just like I ask you, like, how do you know the difference between sadness and happiness, right? Like, you know the difference. It's exactly the same. I know the difference. It's not any of our regular emotions. It's like a presence of a different kind. And I had to accept that. I was like, okay. And then I started thinking about all the people that told me, like the Christians that I was talking about, that told me like they feel the presence of God, and they go, oh, they feel it in their bodies. Like, it's not like just like they believe, they feel it. And I just never felt it. Right. And then I understood, okay, well, now I get it. Like, if somebody feels it in their bodies strongly, if it's super somatic for them, that's where all action, that's where all conviction comes from. Always, we don't act according to what we know, we act according to what we feel. And even in moments in which we think we act out of what we know, or rationale, all that stuff, that's not true. We still act out of what we feel. We just mask it in terms of rationale. We tell a story about it later to feel good about it, but the truth is we always act where the emotion goes, always. And by the way, even the kind of like these ideas that some of the people that are more on the cerebral side, like myself, for example, but there's this very strong tendency, that everybody knows the stereotype, right? There's like, no, I only care about the facts. I don't care about how. Well, no, what happens there is the idea that you're focusing on only the things we know the most sure about, like what you call facts, that makes you feel safe. That's why you act, and that's why you stick to quote unquote the facts. It's not because you're the super amazing calculated machine. It's because you created a little experience for yourself in which, when more facts are present, you feel safe. That's what's going on there. So it's always the feeling. So if somebody feels it in the body, I'm not so like not amazed in terms of diminishment. Just like, now it makes sense to me. So when I see, and I've seen you, Hassan, like when you fully like in it, when you feel it, like it's like with you very strongly. Like it's not an idea you have. It's a presence you have with you, and that I understand entirely.
Yeah, I've got to say that since having had this experience, I think you mentioned before that there's an understanding that you can't bring back into this dimension, and the understanding, what it showed me was the concept of eternity, infinity, and in the grand scheme of eternity and infinity, a lifetime here. So let's say, for example, I've got two sons. If the idea of me dying and not being able to see them again, it's like if we return to that place, that it's not a long time. If I'm the eternal witness and this sort of thing, then the idea that we'll be reunited again, it took me having that experience to, feel so much more comfortable about life now. But it took me to have that experience to feel this way.
Yeah. Again, I think it also depends very much on the kind of person. Like, I like going it by myself. Like, I like the lonely journey. I like it, but it's not for everybody. Also, sorry, Stephanie, I didn't mean to ignore your comments. You said it's really hard to explain childbirth to anyone. Some things you've got to experience to know. That's very, very true. I've seen my wife going through it, and I can tell you that I have a whole new gained respect for women. Even if you looked at the guidebook through evolution alone, there are instincts that collectively we have to continue the species. Everything is okay with consequences. True. Which is one of the sad consequences of people becoming disenchanted with churches, which is fully understandable. But I believe they lose the chance where they truly could possibly have connection with the divine, an opportunity for awe. Yes. And this is one of these things where, to me, and I'm not speaking for in behalf of anyone else, but to me, it's very clear that whatever it is that we're about to embark on as a species, the only way we can pass through the gates, so to speak, is if we will shed all of our conceptual frameworks. And I think that the more people are convinced of specifics and ideas, they're gonna have a very hard time doing that. It's because it basically will feel like a part of them is being ripped out of them. Like, it's like the real thing is truly like it's not made out of description. Gary's saying the source would be the unifying foundation and framework on which all ontology ultimately rests. Just like Hassan is saying, the thing that supports everything and supported by nothing. Having a direct insight into the nature of the source, you can immediately see the universal aspects of all religions and spiritual paths, but can also see where they fall short, and then they are very specific to the context around their origin. Yeah, okay, that's exactly. So we're saying exactly the same thing. I agree with that. And also, it's interesting because, for example, this need for the source, for example, to have these qualities that you just said, Ghost, and like Hassan told me before, which is what, at least in Sufi Islam, that's what is being believed, which is that it is the thing that is supporting everything and supported by nothing. Well, those are the prerequisites for the only thing that can possibly be at the core of reality, right? Nothing else can be, because by definition, whatever that is would be the source of everything, basically, and it would have to support itself from nothing, right? That's the prerequisite for that. But notice that's already just like, okay, that's what it must have, therefore it is that, which is a very different game than trying to understand what is the actual thing. And by the way, it might as well be the case, I don't know if it is, but it might be the case that actually even engaging with the project of trying to understand that kind of a thing separates you from it. That, and even I actually didn't know that was maybe everybody here knew it, and but I was uneducated enough. I did not know this. But when we went and visited the Vatican in Italy, I'm super glad we did like the whole excursion with like somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, and they showed us the Sistine Chapel. I thought it was like a meme. I've heard it before, but I thought it was just like a meme online. I didn't realize that was the actual thing. Like the Michelangelo, why can't I pronounce his name? Michelangelo drew, which is that the part, at the top of the ceiling where the famous image, right, where David is like stretches his arm towards God. What is happening? Okay, the dogs are going crazy. So when there's the famous image, right? If you look at the part, like both, it's literally half a brain. Like you can see like where the corpus callosum is. It's like literally the thing that prevents the touching of the finger is the fact that it's observed through the mind. Like the mind has to be completely relinquished in order to do this final act of touching of the finger of God, basically. And I was like, wait, what? That's crazy. Like I thought it was just like a meme, like a, like one of these like conspiracy theories that somebody made up. But like, no, that was the actual intent. And I was like, he figured it out back then? That's crazy. But yeah, so there's something about the mind and the fact that it's trying to put things into bins and boxes that actually prevents from that final moment of the touching actually to happen. Let me see if there's a couple more comments that we can take on. What up, Ellipsian? Good to see everybody here. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to come in.
No.
I feel like I'm hijacking it a little bit, but
no, you're good.
What's your thoughts on the nature of vision in all of this? So when everybody has these psychedelic experiences, it's always visual. And I've heard that blind people have the same experience.
No, that is not true. No, that is not true. That is not true.
The place I work at, sorry if that's not correct, but
yeah,
I'd heard that. So forgive me if it's wrong, but for me as well, the visions that I were having were more real than this reality, and I felt that as I was coming down, I was being squeezed into these three dimensions.
Absolutely, it does feel more real than this reality, but it is not true that blind people experience it the same way. It's true that people don't apologize. It's like it's a common mistake that people make. Just for the sake of accuracy, that's all. What is true that people who used to be able to see and then became blind, they can see it. But people who were blind from birth could not see it, which is a data point. That means that there are some portions of the brain that, unless they evolve here, you actually they cannot be utilized, which does imply strongly that what these substances do, they do excite the regions that already exist. That's actually a really big data point. So like if you the visual cortex is there, but unless it's used, it atrophies, and you never, like, people blind from birth, they don't even have the concept of a visual. They don't know what that is. There's some evidence that they might be experiencing something akin to like colors when they go into, but it's kind of hard to discern, because how do you communicate that? They don't have a point of reference.
Yeah.
They can't say yes or no to you, right? But they definitely do not experience these like super realistic visuals that other people are experiencing. People who had sight, they can do it, but that's not surprising because their eyes got damaged for that reason or another. But the parts of the brain that already developed, the visual cortex, didn't suffer. So that would be people who are blind from birth have their visual cortex taken over by other sense systems. Interesting. There you go. Is that your field of expertise, Stephanie? Remind me. Source would be unifying. Oh, okay. We said this. Okay.
I have another question, Danny.
Yeah.
Just if I may.
Sure.
You mentioned that you experienced different kind of world maps. If you I don't know how else to call it, and they were in opposite of each other, or
Wait. Explain this again. What do you mean opposite of each other?
Contradicting. They were contradicting each other. That's what
Oh, specific ones.
Kind of
Yeah.
show
So
stuff that were contradicting
Yeah.
each other.
Yeah.
And my question to you was just what your thought on it is. It is something that I personally have not experienced yet, but I have read about from Jürgen Sievers, a very experienced out-of-body traveler, that he experienced right before he experienced something like this unity, what part RSD mentioned, what he experienced in his DMT experience, kind of the same thing. But before he experienced that, he kind of had to overcome some kind of obstacles. And this was kind of like, he mentioned that kind of like reality bubbles. And within each reality bubble, everything seemed so coherent. And as if this is all there is. It was so tempting to get stuck in it, because even in the middle there was like a kind of like a flower or something, for example, and it looked like this is God. This is the center of universe. There's nothing beyond it. It was beautiful. He said this is how where some people would what some people would call heaven, and even people spend their times with. But he also saw something like people who were like realities that were in their own ideologies, where people get stuck, and even these realities fought with each other. Kind of like a thought form reality bubble that was so coherent within itself that when you were in it, it was almost impossible to get out of it again. But he got aware that this is a distraction, and got out of it, and then right after that, then he was kind of going to the next stage, and then experienced this kind of being the creator itself.
That's exactly my point. That people should be less convinced of themselves, of what they think they know, because it locks them up in one of these realities, basically.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
there's just two different. I'm realizing slowly that there's just two different projects here. One of them has to do with personal growth, and you can say even universal soul's growth, and one that might be maybe connected in some ways, but it might be irrelevant for certain levels of emergence. So I'll be more specific. And also just to this quick question that somebody asked here, I don't want to ignore you guys. Kyle is saying, could you explain data point? Yeah, data point simply means it's one bit of information or an idea that you collect together, that together it creates a picture. So a data point it's used in statistics, but basically like you have one data point, two data points, three data points, like how many data points, the more data points you have, the more you can create a more coherent image of, any statistical analysis of something. So in this case, it's used more metaphorically, but basically like if I give you one fact about a situation, okay, that's one data point. The more data points I give you, more facts about the situation, the easier it is to construct a picture from it. That's all it means. Okay, so yeah, I would say that because there is this tension between how much of it is we are really creating and how much of it is already kind of happening and we have no choice in the matter, and it just kind of rides. Now there's a lot of variation here and a lot of flexibility. One of them, well, there's just the very obvious things that people tend to ignore, right? People who are like super gung-ho about like, no, it's all you create all your reality. I'm like, okay, walk through the wall. Well, it's, we just agree that like, oh, come on, like, let's be real for a second. Like, you can't walk through the wall, right? So that's important. It means that at least at a certain period of time, I'm not opposed to the idea that maybe you can at some point, but right now you can't. And that's a fact. And it's important, right? Let's not ignore this, right? So if whatever this is, whatever the wall represents in your state of being, either it represents some kind of a level of conviction that our species carries, and because of that we still experience like physical matter in the way that it appears to us. But I think it's quite premature to say with a lot of conviction, with absolute certainty, oh no, but we're gonna overcome it soon. It's like, you don't know that. You don't know that, right? It's like you really don't know that. That's an idea you have. So until the moment comes that you can walk through the wall, that is an important part of what is true of where we are. And the fact that some people like you can go and like explore these like very open, from what I understand, because I've never experienced it myself, but I spoke to a few people that can astral project, and I accept it. I believe it. I believe that it's real. But then from what I understand from the description, and you can add to it if you want, but it's almost like the pure form of imagination, but not imagination in the sense of fake. Like it's where the real kind of like your consciousness can actually play. It's where it's coming from, and it goes to its real space and its actual home. But it's much more free. Like it's like you can kind of go into places, and it's interesting that you're saying this person experienced both the molecule and astral projection, because I didn't meet a lot of people that did both, and he's saying it's similar. That's interesting to me. But you can't ignore the fact that right now you are this thing in this body doing this thing, and for this period of time you're limited by whatever we call the physical space. So the reason I'm saying all this is because what I'm interested in is, what is this structure? Where are we? It's not a nothing question. Like, it's an important question. Like, what is this? Why are we here? If the place where we go in astral projection is home, why are we here? What is the meaning of this? Right? And again, I just simply do not accept these very like convinced statements that people have, that they have no ground to stand on to be so convinced about this, right? They're like, oh yeah, and then they just give you all this information about like, well, it's like why are you so convinced of this? And it's confusing to me because, like, okay, let's take somebody specific, for example. What's his name? Matthias Stefanos, right? What a lovely human, truly. Like, it's so clear that he's such a beautiful person, right? And I have no doubt that his experience is very real about what he's saying. But that's my point, that because I've also experienced things that I was absolutely convinced of, and they were, like I said, sometimes like they collide with one another. I can give you an example. One of them was that I have this like very dramatic choice to make about kind of like where I'm going to be in reality. The details will take us afar. It doesn't matter. The point of it was like I had to kind of like make this very dramatic decision. And they were like, sorry, but you're in this position. And for a long time, I felt really bad for like months, because that was kind of like what I thought was going on. And then I saw this completely open-ended picture of like, oh, no, we're just kind of playing. It's all a game. It's like, I was like, oh, so which one is it? It's like, so, but in that moment, it felt so serious. Like, so why are now it's all like with this light heart. And then I realized, oh, it's all kind of like, you know what it feels more like? Kind of like Mid-Journey in its early days. It's just kind of like all kinds of things. It just kind of comes, and some of them will look super convincing, but so what? It's like you kind of it's like there's imagine that the existence is unfolding into a space that it itself cannot inspect. It unfolds into an infinite possibility space that any moment now a new thing can become real. And then if you live in that reality, then who's to say anything, right? So to the extent that it's possible, I'm trying to stay with the thing that makes sense to me, which is like, let's not pretend like the things that are obvious are not obvious. Can't jump out of a window, can't fly, can't walk through a wall. I don't see these as limitations. I see these as points of interest. It's like, what is that? Why is it that way? if everything is mind, why are these portions of the mind this solid? Why are they so regular, so to speak? Why do they look like the laws of physics? Those are interesting questions, I think, right? And I think that actually, under an idealistic perspective, it's not that crazy and not that weird, because the universe, the universal mind, would have certain properties that are these properties and not other properties. Because if it's anything goes all the time, then it's just what's called an anthropic soup. It's just nonsense. It's just like blah, and nothing matters, right? There's no distinction between anything. So clearly, there's some rules by which it's working, but or it makes sense itself to itself, so to speak. So those rules would be the laws of physics, or the laws of computation behind the laws of physics. And it does not remove anything from the majesty and beauty and magic of what other possibilities lie out there. But you don't get to actually partake in them if you're going to keep pretending, not you personally, but all of us, if we're going to keep pretending to know things we don't know. So the reason I mentioned Matthias Stefanos is because he's a perfect example of a person who's super lovely human. I would love to spend time with him. He's like, he's very clearly pleasant to be around. But then he says these things with like, I remember all my lifetimes, my guides from the 6th dimension, my guides from the 5th dimension. And I'm like, even if you had these experiences and they're very real for you, do you have no awareness that there's other people that didn't experience it? So what to them, do you have no perception of what it might be like to be on the receiving end of what you're saying? Do you not take into account that there are other experiences in this world? Like it just feels to me a little kind of like almost like unaware of the fact that we all have different perceptions. The part of the consensus game is to respect the fact that other people have a different experience, and then try your best to speak a language that can land somewhere in the middle between you and them, versus just kind of telling them how things are. Does that make sense? Kabbalion is another example.
Yeah. I wasn't trying to say that this guy tells people this is how it is.
Oh no! I didn't take it to be. I didn't take it to be that. I just kind of drifted in my own thoughts. I guess my deeper points in relationship to what you said is that if there's always a balance between the things that we kind of obvious here, but also what's possible there. And ultimately, if we can, for example, if you can go and you can do things, right? And I don't know to what extent you go and explore, but if you can reliably come back with information that is translatable to here, then I would say, oh, amazing. But also, this is testable. So there's nothing, there should be no resistance to test it in the way that makes sense in this realm, right? And if it's just something that does great work for you and for your soul, I'm all for it. But it should not be, and I'm not saying you're saying it. It's just like I'm kind of occupying this space where the bridge part is the most important part. But I by no means do I think that that's the most important part for everybody. For some people, just going and exploring forever and just enjoying the ride of that is the most important thing. So maybe that's a good opportunity to ask you, how do you view the biggest portion of what that gift is?
The biggest gift is finding your own answers. Like, for example, my motivation to start to have them consciously, so I had them already when I was younger, but they just happened, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I didn't know what they were. I just knew this was so hyper real and more real than real, and was amazing. It felt wonderful, but I didn't have a name yet for that. But when I was having, my sister died, then a year later my mother died, and then my father died, then was like, okay, game on. I want to find out, is there a life after death? I already read about near-death experience. I wanted to know if all of what's, because I wasn't grown up with religion, I wanted to find out my answers on my own, and I did. So I did meet my family members. I did meet this kind of experience of being your complete blueprint without the baggage and emotional baggage also from your body and your mind. This kind of freedom you feel in this different kind of expanded consciousness. You're not always super expanded when you're in the lower, very close to earth realms. It's not like super expansive, but when you go a little bit higher, the better your state is before you do that. And I also only want to do it when I'm in a good state, because I know it determines your intention, and your state of being determines where you land, so to speak, when you get out of body. And it's not so easy to test that, I think, as you would want that to be tested, because that would mean you stay here in the physical and explore. And I think that's possible for a lot, but it's very hard for that astral body or energy body or whatever to stay here, because it's not how do you say, it's too dense. So you naturally want to go higher and to explore, and to how do you say, to explore, to see this beauty that is on the other side is so beautiful. It's kind of you take a lot with you from this. To integrate that took me a while I have to say. It's not like it was like oozy, all rainbows and everything. I still had the same struggles as I had before, but I knew at least where I'm going. I knew I want to feel like this blueprint. This is how I actually feel. This is how I actually am and who I am. So I know where I'm going with this. Maybe if you're in your real life, you don't even have a perspective, but then you have a perspective. This is how you actually are, like free of fear, bold, full of love. I'm so full of love when I'm off the other side. I'm not so loving all the time when I'm here. And so these kind of, and I also had an experience where I wanted to see the light, the one that, the near-death experience is always talking about. And it took me some preparation. It didn't work immediately. But after a while, I actually got to meet it. And I also experienced it as, so first of all, it was so overwhelming. It was like waves of love. And I thought, oh my God, I'm going to explode. And then I cannot go back to my body. And in that moment, so I knew if I stay here too long, it was so overwhelming that I'm going to merge with it. And then it immediately held back so I could observe it, so it calmed itself down for me, so to speak, so I could observe it. And then I realized, I am also this light. But I also saw it was not genderless. There was duality still in it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the feeling, and that was just a feeling that I got, that this is not the only light. It's just
there you go.
a being,
Yep.
and maybe that's responsible for us.
Exactly.
But there is much, much more beyond it. It's also part of a bigger collective, so to speak. This is what I got.
So now you're speaking.
It was like
Sorry.
I saw that there was like the female part, the female energy was very sweet and loving. And I remember that I said, oh my God, you're so sweet and so loving. And the male part was very playful, very, very creative and playful, almost like a little kid that exploring, like a little boy that wants to take, how boys are. They want to take everything, how's the toy working, and want to, a little bit like you want to know how everything works,
Yeah.
The female part was very wise and very loving and sweet. It was so sweet. And then it turned into a stingray, so I could touch it. So I had something to touch it. This is what I remember. So these kind of experiences, I always wanted to know, is there a life after death? I wanted to believe in it, but actually experiencing it, and in the moment you're out of body, there is no doubt. It's like, you're out of body. It's like, oh my God, this shit is real. This kind of, it's not like a dream. You cannot.
No, I get that part. I get that part from everybody who can experience this. This is what I'm saying. I have some people who I know well that I have like very deep trust in how they perceive the world. I don't doubt it, actually. Like, that's why I'm saying I wish I could experience it. I don't know if it's I don't know if I'm spiritually retarded, or like I don't know what I could never experience it. And by the way, just a quick answer to Kyle again. Yes, we have tried it with 5MEO and it works. By the way, they're probably gonna mark us right now because the TikTok is super sensitive to the R word. Hey, TikTok, didn't you hear that it's back? Come on, man. Anyways, so to your question, yes, we could see it with 5MEO even better than all the other substances. So it's actually kind of crazy. Aaron, how are you, my brother? Good to see you. So first of all, to be clear, I don't doubt for 1 second that what you're experiencing is real, right? But what you said towards the end is exactly my point, which is that, and that's what I mean by different levels of the game. It's exactly my point. It literally goes on forever. So the thing that my experience was, because I saw it from the side, is that what people call the higher self, which most people kind of, in their perception, just me asking, it's not, I didn't assume that. I just asked a lot of people point blank, and most people that I asked said, well, yeah, ultimately it is kind of God. Like that is like that. We're all kind of like God together. And what I saw is that, yes, but you're just one of many. Like, we are one of ones, of many ones. So still there's a multiplicity, right? And the thing that is the unified thing is beyond pointing. That's what I saw. So like, it is not the thing you refer to or aligned with in terms of your perception when you're talking about the one. The actual one is beyond pointing. Your perception cannot point to it. It is on such a plane that is just beyond pointing, not even beyond, forget comprehension, it's beyond pointing. The address is unknown to anyone. So it's kind of like you can't even, there's nothing to point to. And that sounds like, so what? But to me, it's not so what, because the way that I'm designed, I don't know why that is, but at this point, it's very clear to me that it's not even my ego. It's like I'm built this way. My thing doesn't stop. It can't. I can't. Like, and maybe that's why I'm limited by not. I think maybe. Well, I'm totally guessing. I have no idea. It might just be that I'm just, have to do more work. Very possible. But my assumption is that maybe one of the.
No, you are supposed to be that way.
Yeah, I think if I will pop out of my body, because my tendency is to never stop, I literally will never stop. Like, I will just keep going forever. Like, I won't stop. I can't. It's like I belong where outside of existence is. Almost like that's what it feels like. Like, it's just like, and no, if you said, yeah, but within that there's then you're not talking about the same place I'm talking about. The place I'm talking about is there's nothing beyond it. There's just not, and if there's no such place, then I will just go on forever. And maybe it's like a function that is then instantiated in me, or it's just maybe it's just random and it's just some kind of a cosmic evolution, and my cosmic DNA is just doing that. I'm just kind of designed to do. I have no idea. I don't take ownership or I don't claim that I've had to do anything to it. It's just how it is. And because of that, I'm obligated to just kind of report honestly about what I'm experiencing in the moment, because I can't do anything else. Yeah, but I'm truly fascinated by people that can do what you can do. And I know exactly what you mean. Never experienced it, but I know exactly what you mean by, holy shit, this is actually real. Like, I understand that part very well, because that you definitely experience on both the spirit and the God molecule. I just don't know if it's the same, but the experience is very much that, which is like, holy shit, are you kidding me? This is for real. Like, but the fact that you can do it naturally, that's like extra wild to me. That's amazing. And I met a few people that can do it.
I'm pretty sure you could do that too. I don't think it would take you long to do that.
So what?
Especially because you already kind of, explored in your way I don't think that would take you long. It would take you just a few intention setting for maybe 2 weeks, and then you're gonna have your first experience.
So okay, give me a practice. What should I do?
So you should do right before you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And the best is napping, so not being super tired right in the night or something. The best is in the morning or nap.
Oh, a friend of mine told me this. Is like, and then you put an alarm, and then right before you go back to sleep, you try to get up but don't move your body, right? That kind of thing.
Yeah, you should be a little bit tired, but not so tired that you have a full 8-hour sleep, this kind of thing.
Okay.
I mean, it can happen too, but it's much, much harder. So if you want to save yourself time, just do it when, for example, you had maybe 4 to 6 hours of sleep. You set your alarm, you get up for maybe 20 minutes, and then you get back to bed.
Okay.
This is the best method. Or you are tired in the afternoon. You feel like, I want to have a nap. That's also a very, very good time to do that. You go. You don't even have to meditate so much. It's just you have right before you drift off to sleep. This is the when you're almost gone, but not quite. This is where you set the intention, and this is where the intention setting actually has impact. And then you set the intention, I'm gonna get out of body, and then you try to kind of stay aware as long as possible while your body falls asleep. But at one point you have to let go. You have to kind of, they call that a click out. You have to let your body fall asleep. So, and you do that, you practice this for 2 weeks. I bet you.
Wait, but I didn't understand. So I didn't quite understand this part. So I let my body fall asleep, but I'm kind of holding it, letting my body fall asleep. But then my friend said, the one who was telling me this, he told me something very similar. And I said, but then you have to basically, the best way I can describe it, he said, is that you have to basically get up without moving your body. Like you have to like literally kind of just physically get up.
Feel like you're right, it's gonna click.
I tried it. I have no idea. I tried it 3 times. I don't know what that means. Yeah, like I tried it 3 times. I don't know what that means. It's like it doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe you have to try that for every day for 2 weeks.
Okay.
And you're gonna have your first experience. I promise you, it's so easy.
But can I ask you a question?
Someone like you could compare. That would be so awesome.
Sure, that would be awesome. I agree. But I have to ask you a question. Do you not think it's possible that some people are they're just not, they don't have that talent? Like they're not.
Everybody can do that.
Why do you think that?
Everybody can do this because in the night you're doing it already anyway. When you go, because this why I wanted to say something, but I didn't, because when you said, but sometimes when you dream, you have this whole other life, and then you remember stuff, and you have this whole history.
But it's just a dream.
This is already, sometimes it's a dream, but sometimes these are also parallel lives. You are just not aware. You didn't take this full conscious awareness with you. That's why you experience it as a dream. But sometimes it's just, make this kind of little exercise during the day and say, hey, I'm aware, I'm here right now. This kind of like practices to be fully conscious in the now, because the most important part about out of body experiences is actually learning to stay conscious, because you're doing it every night anyway. It's just you're doing it on autopilot. You're not doing it with your full awareness. It's you have to. There is this part of full awareness and full consciousness, and it's navigating through your different bodies, so to speak. There's your physical body, the astral body. Then there's something. Some people say mental body. Me personally, I haven't experienced it, but to go into the mental plane or the causal plane, as I have heard, where it's like archetypes and then there's no time and it's all confusing, you also have to kind of leave your astral body behind. So it's always this kind of, how do I stay conscious? So do this stuff maybe at least three times a day, while you're walking, while you're doing something. Hey, where am I? I'm just here. I'm fully aware. This kind of like checking yourself to not be on autopilot. And
No, that I do. That I do a lot because I'm a Vipassana practitioner, so I do this a lot of my day, which I'm just kind of like paying attention, really close attention to the moment. And I've spent,
I think you're gonna be so good at that. It's gonna be so easy for you because you're already on this. It's gonna be so easy because you're already on this. It's
Sorry,
just this
Zima.
kind of sleep. Hold it right before you sleep. Drift out. That's the intention. The intention feels like when you put your foot down, somebody wants to take something away from you, and you say, "Hey, no, that's mine." Where's your energy when you do it? When you feel that? It's like in the solar plexus. You have to have a lot of energy here. Like, hey, this is where there has to be some bada bam behind this intention setting.
I love bada bam.
Might
But-
not work when you're a little bit sluggish with your energy.
Okay.
You have to feel like, yeah, I want to do this, but not too much. You have to relax at the same time. This kind of paradox between I want to do this and I relax at the same time. This kind of balance. This is where the intention sets in. And we do that right before you slip away. This kind of this. And
Okay, so basically so what I'm getting is basically having a targeted energy in a moment in which the body slips away back into sleep, and then the conscious mind still needs to kind of stay awake and almost snap out of it. But then my friend said that will get you out of body, but that's not the same as astral projection. Like astral projection is like, how would you say astral projection is just further out, or it's a completely different thing?
This is for me, these are just two words for the same thing.
For the same thing,
So
okay.
there's like you can call that astral projection. You can call it. This would be a direct exit. So there are two. You can also do another method that might be easier for you in the beginning. Is you can also have an OBE by transforming or transmuting a lucid dream into an OBE. A lucid dream is basically where you're already out of body, but what you're seeing might be kind of like a sandbox with your own projection. I mean, you project your own stuff so you can process stuff into a kind of storyline. So that what you're seeing is not actually a consensus reality, which would be the astral, but it's your own projection. But you can get out of this when you're already, when you're aware, I'm dreaming, and then you just enter it. And a good method, exit it. And a good method to exit it is jumping through a window, going through a door, and with the intention, I'm getting out of my own projection. Or you say a command, all projections gone now. And why this is easier is because you do over maybe 2 weeks, you do some reality checks during the day. Like you try to put your hands through the door and say, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? And eventually you will do that in your dream and say, am I dreaming? And then your hand goes through the wall. And it's like, what? I'm dreaming. This is how you get lucid. And then you can exit your dream projection. That's a little bit easier method than the direct exit. So for a beginner, sometimes this is the easier way because you only have to do some reality checks a few times a day for maybe 2 weeks.
Okay, well that's very exciting and very useful. There's good energy here, so maybe I'll definitely try all of this and I'll report back. I'll send you a message so we stay in touch, and I will report. Also, I see the universe just entered the chat, which is very fitting. Somebody with the handle "the universe entered." Hello, it's perfect. The universe entered chat, and Vintage USA, so they're right next to each other. Great. Thank you for this. I appreciate all of that. I will definitely try something. Thank you, Jenny. And okay, so I will definitely report back to you and see how it goes. I have to slowly adjourn because it's already getting late and I still have to take my Gsnap said attracted to my chat. Well, welcome to the chat. Glad to have you here. Crystal, Tyler. If you guys interested in the retreat that's going to be in February, at the end of February, February 28th in Costa Rica, let me know. Email me to dengoprox, DANGOPROX @gmail.com, dengoprox@gmail.com, and I'll send you some information. It's gonna be a blast. We've built some pretty amazing things there. Thank you so much. Part RSD. Remind me your name again. I'm so sorry. Scott. Yes. So thank you so much, Scott, and thank you, Hassan. Always sharing your wonderful presence with us, and thank you, Gary, for joining, brother. Much appreciated. Stephanie, thank you so much for all the input. Jet Black, Vintage, Universe. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Universe. So this is about the retreat. Also, we're dropping the new trailer very, very, very soon for the movie. If you guys still want to donate to the efforts of the film, please find the trailer of the film right here under this chat. And it's called The Discovery. You can just search for it on YouTube on Dango Thoughts. And you can donate on the GoFundMe page. If you donate over $1,000, it's quite a bit, but you will automatically be placed in a list of people who would see the movie, everybody at the same time, as a world premiere before anybody else. I think it's pretty dope with Q&A and everything else. If you guys want to follow me across platforms, thank you, Maverick Star. It'll be Danny Goller on Instagram and TikTok. It'll be Goller Danny on X. It'll be LaserX83 on Twitch and Dango Thoughts on YouTube. Dango Thoughts. You can also check out my new show on Spotify, 0 to 1 with Danny Goller, From Earthbound Minds to Cosmic Citizens, a show that talks about the future of humanity, and 0 to 1 with Danny Goller. On YouTube, you can also join the membership program where you gain early access to all my content and you gain access to my weekly lives for members only. And when we dive much deeper into all kinds of topics, it's a lot of fun. You should join. And you can grab yourself some merch from the store on YouTube, which helps the channel. And you're going to get a really cool design, either t-shirt or mug or something for the winter. We have the core, COR, Code of Reality design, and the Human First. Human First is the campaign, the notes, the attitude that we should treat each other as humans first before any political affiliation, religious conviction, or any idea you might have about the world. We should treat each other as human beings first, and also the rest of the world. Thank you so much, Gsnap. I appreciate you. What else? I launched my Substack, so come follow me on Substack, and you can become a member also. It's just Danny Goller, DANNYGOLER on Substack. Come join that. What other announcements do we have? I feel like I need like a whole. I need like a recorded version. No, it's not as fun. We know it's not as fun. And if you want to look for more stuff about the lasers, it will be codeofreality.com. Protocol, lasers, all that good stuff is on codeofreality.com. I'll place it right here, right now. And if you want to go and share your experiments with the laser, it's on the screen right now, and see other people's experiments with the lasers, go to veilbreak.ai, and you can do it there. It's a special tool built by Carmelo Santana and by Eric Carter, my partner at Code of Reality. Thank you guys. This is they're doing incredible work on the technical side and just arranging the whole thing. Truly, like, unbelievable. I want to thank our how can I forget? Come join our Discord where people are talking to us from right now audibly. Thank you so much, everybody, for the likes. If you haven't liked the chat yet, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channels tremendously. Wherever you're following from, please do all three of these things. And come join our Discord community of like-minded people sharing these ideas. You can find the link on the main page on YouTube, third link from the top, and on TikTok, link tree in the description, first link at the top. Links work, so you can join, and I appreciate you so much. Again, reminding everybody, retreat, a few more spots left, so let me know. It's dangoprox@gmail.com if you want to know more information about that. And I will be launching the new community very soon, so be notifying everybody on Monday, probably on Discord, so you guys can see that. I want to acknowledge our incredible moderator, Guru. You're the man, brother. Always here, no matter what. It's unbelievable, actually, so we really appreciate you on YouTube and on Discord. And thank you so much to you, the audience, for always being here, asking questions, debating, showing interest this channel is what it is thanks to you guys showing up and engaging. So I really, really, really appreciate that. Do we have anything else to declare? No, I think that's about it. Love you all. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Peace and love. Ciao. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a good night, everybody.